When I meet with a potential seller and that seller has a septic, I do ask the age of the house and then also the condition of the septic. Is it original? Have they made any upgrades or have they replaced it? If a house was built prior to 1980 and the septic's original, one of my recommendations would be to perform a septic inspection. A true septic inspection is not just pumping your septic. It is hiring a licensed septic inspector to come and open up the septic and put a camera in the septic so you can take a look at the major components of the septic. If the house is vacant, what I also recommend is to make sure to do a load test. That's a 2-day septic test in which the septic inspector will fill the septic with water and then come back the next day to make sure that it's functioning properly. If you'd rather not spend the money on the septic inspection, I totally understand. But what I do prepare the sellers for is we may have to deal with not only a septic repair, but possibly a full replacement. A strategy for putting your house on the market with an older septic would be to, number one, do a septic inspection. If it fails, hire an engineer. The engineer will come out to your home, do what's called a percolation test with a witness from the state to determine where the new septic will go. Once the engineer creates the design and it's approved by the county and or the township, then it goes out to contractors for quotes. Why is getting a quote important? Because that will tell the seller how much it will cost to replace the septic. Do you have to replace the septic as a seller? No. If you do not have the proceeds to replace the septic, you can hold money in escrow at closing and use that proceeds to install the new septic. Can you take the price of a new septic off of the sales price? Absolutely, you can do that. The only issue is the buyer may not have the total cost to put the new septic in, which is why we close with money in escrow quite a lot when a septic needs to be replaced. Can you sell a house with a failed septic? 100%. There's no such thing as a septic police. But here's the problem you're going to run into. If you don't want to replace a septic, you don't want to hire an engineer, you don't know the cost of the septic. So you are asking the buyer to take the risk of a large monetary item. So as a seller, you're asking that buyer to take a risk, not knowing how much the septic will cost. I've seen septics range anywhere from $35,000 all the way up to $75,000, depending on the property. Buyers typically don't want to take on that risk. So they are asking for sellers to determine the cost of the septic. Another question I get asked often is, if I go to a home with a cesspool, I do let sellers know that many buyers want to stay away from cesspools. But having a cesspool in New Jersey is a little bit different. You can definitely transfer title with a cesspool. Don't let people tell you you cannot sell a house with a cesspool. I've done it before. It's just as challenging though when you put your house on the market as it is with a failed septic. Can a buyer get a mortgage on a home that has a cesspool in New Jersey? Yes, a buyer can get a mortgage on a home with a cesspool. It depends on the type of lending, and it also depends on the mortgage company. If cesspools are common in the area, then buyers are able to finance a home with a cesspool. If I'm representing a buyer and the septic is older than 1980, and I know this buyer is going to want to stay in the home 10, 20, maybe 30 years, I make sure to educate the buyer that they will be responsible for that large monetary item and that replacement when they go to sell the house down the road. If I represent a buyer, the house was built in 1975 and the septic passes, I make sure that buyer understands that that septic will be their large monetary issue when they go to sell the house down the road. Like cars, septics only have a certain lifespan. If you're a homeowner and you're not thinking of selling, just make sure that you're taking care of your septic. If you have questions about your septic, I'm always happy to give you my list of recommended vendors. Make sure you're treating the septic well and not flushing items down that shouldn't be in your septic. As a real estate agent in New Jersey, I know a lot about septics. I'm definitely not an engineer and I'm not a septic inspector, but I can certainly guide you. Whether you're thinking about selling 3, 5, 10 years down the road, I can definitely guide you on how to get your septic prepared for a house sale. Have questions? Need real estate advice? You don't have to put your house on the market in order to call me. Make sure sure you reach out to me at any time, and I'm always happy to chat.